You're listening to this right now not by accident, but by necessity. Something in your life has cracked open. Maybe a relationship ending, a career collapsing, a belief system crumbling, or simply a mounting sense that you can't continue as you have been. Carl Jung discovered that these moments when life becomes unbearable aren't random cruelties but precise communications from your psyche. The very fact that you're here, listening to these words about Jung's deepest insights, means you've reached what he called a critical threshold. That point where the unconscious can no longer be ignored, and transformation becomes not just possible, but inevitable. Keep watching to understand why your life had to fall apart, what your suffering is actually trying to teach you, and how Jung's approach transforms crisis into the doorway to your authentic self. Jung himself experienced this principle during his confrontation with the unconscious after breaking with Freud. He wrote, "I stood at the edge of the world, at the boundary of the known, and gazed into the void. In that void, he discovered not emptiness, but fullness, the very insights that would transform psychology." His crisis was an obstacle to his work. It was the necessary condition for receiving it. The same is true for you right now. Whatever brought you here isn't your problem. It's your invitation. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. The crisis you're experiencing is the unconscious becoming conscious, forcing its way into awareness because you've ignored its subtler messages. That relationship that keeps repeating the same painful pattern, that's unconscious material seeking consciousness. The career that suddenly feels like prison, that's your unlived life demanding attention. The anxiety that won't respond to rational solutions, that's psyche insisting on deeper work. You're here because the unconscious has orchestrated circumstances to make this encounter necessary. The synchronicity of finding this message right now deserves attention. Jung coined the term synchronicity to describe meaningful coincidences that reveal the hidden connection between inner and outer worlds. You didn't randomly stumble upon this. Something in you recognized something here that you need. Maybe you've been seeing Jung's name repeatedly. Perhaps someone mentioned his ideas just as you were struggling with exactly what he addresses. Or you simply felt compelled to listen without knowing why. These aren't coincidences, but precision guidance from the self. The archetype of wholeness that knows what you need before ego recognizes it. What Jung understood that most miss is that psychological knowledge isn't like other information. You can't receive it until you're psychologically ready. You could have heard these exact words 5 years ago, and they would have meant nothing. But now, because of what you've experienced, what you've suffered, what you've questioned, these words land differently. They find soil prepared by your struggles. Your pain hasn't been pointless. It's been preparation. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. But becoming requires first understanding what has happened to you at levels deeper than ego comprehends. The crisis that brought you here is revealing patterns laid down long ago, complexes formed in early life, shadows created by what you had to reject to survive. This isn't about blame or victimhood. It's about recognition. You can't transform what you can't see, and crisis forces seeing. The specific timing of this encounter matters profoundly. Jung discovered that psyche has its own timeline, its own seasons. There are times for building ego and times for transcending it, periods of external achievement and periods of internal reckoning, phases of climbing mountains and phases of descending into valleys. You're listening to this now because you've entered what Jung called a night sea journey, that necessary descent into unconscious depths where transformation happens. During such times, Jung observed, certain themes invariably emerge. The persona, your social mask, starts feeling unbearably false. You can't pretend anymore, can't maintain the image, can't keep performing the role. Simultaneously, shadow material erupts. The anger you've suppressed, the needs you've denied, the dreams you've abandoned all demand attention. What you've pushed down pushes up. What you've run from catches up. This isn't punishment, it's integration opportunity. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. The crisis that brought you here is forcing you to look inside. External solutions have failed because the problem isn't external. More success won't fill the emptiness. New relationships won't heal old wounds. Geographic moves won't escape internal patterns. You're being called to turn inward, and this message is part of that calling. Dreams during these threshold times often carry specific messages. You might be dreaming of death, not literal death, but ego death, the end of who you've been. Dreams of being lost, underwater, in darkness, or underground. Dreams of old structures collapsing, familiar people becoming strangers, or strange figures offering guidance. These aren't random but precise communications about your psychological state. The unconscious is preparing you for transformation. The people who appear in your life during these times, including the voice speaking these words now, aren't accidental either. Jung noticed that when someone enters individuation crisis, they attract others who can guide them. Books fall off shelves. Conversations happen that speak directly to your situation. Teachers appear in various forms. This isn't magical thinking, but psychological law. When you're ready for specific knowledge, life provides the encounters necessary to receive it. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. During threshold times, these irritations intensify. People who trigger you are showing you your shadow with spotlight clarity. What annoys you most is what you most need to integrate. That person whose confidence bothers you, they're showing you your rejected power. The one whose emotionality disturbs you, they're reflecting your disowned feelings. Crisis makes these projections unbearable precisely so you'll reclaim them. The body often forces the crisis that brings psychological encounter. Illness, exhaustion, anxiety symptoms that don't respond to treatment. These aren't just physical problems, but psyche using soma to get attention. Jung understood that when we won't listen to psychological messages, they intensify through physical symptoms. Your body might have brought you here by making it impossible to continue ignoring what needs attention. Here's what's actually happening. You've reached what Jung called an enantiodromia, the point where something turns into its opposite. What worked before now works against you. Strengths become weaknesses. Solutions become problems. This isn't failure, but natural psychological law. Just as seasons must change, psychological attitudes must transform. You can't live your whole life in spring. The fact that your old ways are failing isn't mistake, it's necessity. Show me a sane man and I will cure him for you. The sanity that's breaking down, the functional adaptation, the successful persona, the together life, was always partial. It excluded too much. Now, excluded elements demand inclusion. The cure isn't returning to previous functioning, but expanding to include what was excluded. You're not breaking down, you're breaking open. The loneliness that often accompanies these times serves a purpose. Old relationships that depended on your false self naturally fall away. People who needed you to stay who you were become uncomfortable with your changes. This isolation isn't punishment, but cocoon, necessary protection while transformation occurs. You can't become butterfly while maintaining caterpillar relationships. But new connections appear, like this one happening right now. People who understand the journey because they've made it. Voices that speak to where you're going rather than where you've been. Communities of transformation rather than stagnation. Jung found that individuation, while deeply personal, connects us more profoundly with others who are also becoming conscious. You're alone, but not alone. The temptation during crisis is to seek quick fixes, to return to previous stability. But Jung understood that regression serves no one. You can't go back to unconsciousness once consciousness has dawned. You can't unknow what you now know. You can't stuff expanded awareness back into old containers. The only way out is through, and through means deeper into the very material you've been avoiding. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. This becoming is what your crisis is initiating, not who others want you to be, not who you thought you should be, but who you actually are beneath all adaptations, projections, and personas. This true self isn't some fixed entity waiting discovery. It's dynamic potential that emerges through conscious engagement with unconscious material. Your crisis is birth canal for this emergence. The specific message you need right now is this: trust the process. What feels like destruction is deconstruction of false structures. What seems like failure is freedom from impossible standards. What appears as loss is space for genuine discovery. Jung went through this himself and emerged not unscathed, but transformed. He discovered that breakdown can become breakthrough if consciously engaged. The shadow work that crisis demands isn't punishment, but liberation. Every quality you've rejected contains energy you need. Every part you've disowned holds gifts. The anger you've suppressed contains power to set boundaries. The vulnerability you've hidden holds capacity for real intimacy. The wildness you've tamed carries creative fire. Crisis comes when these rejected parts won't stay rejected any longer. Synchronicities multiply during these threshold times, confirming you're on the right path even when it feels wrong. Songs speak directly to your situation. Random conversations contain exactly what you need to hear. Books open to relevant passages. This message itself is synchronicity. Inner need meeting outer resource at precisely the right moment. These aren't coincidences, but evidence of psyche's larger intelligence operating. Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. Replace love with whatever you're desperately seeking: peace, purpose, connection, meaning. The crisis reveals barriers you didn't know existed, defense mechanisms that once protected now imprison, patterns that ensured survival now prevent living. This recognition hurts but heals. The night sea journey you're in has mythological precedent. Every culture describes this necessary descent into underworld, belly of whale, dark forest, desert wilderness. Heroes don't go there voluntarily. They're forced by circumstance. But in that forcing lies gift. What ego won't choose, self-arranges. What personality avoids, individuation requires. Your unwanted journey is actually sacred initiation. Dreams and active imagination become crucial tools now. Jung discovered that conscious dialogue with unconscious contents transforms them. Don't just think about your crisis. Engage it imaginatively. What does your depression look like? What does your anxiety want to tell you? What is your symptom protecting you from? These aren't just exercises, but technologies for transformation. The religious dimension emerges whether you're religious or not. Jung saw that psyche has natural religious function: need for meaning, connection to greater whole, experience of numinous. Crisis often signals spiritual emergency as much as psychological. Old meanings collapse so new can emerge. Previous gods die so living relationship with mystery can begin. You're not losing faith, but finding it at a deeper level. Time behaves strangely during these passages. Days feel like years. Past and future collapse into intense present. Linear progress gives way to spiral deepening. This temporal disruption isn't confusion, but reorganization. Psyche operates in kairos, meaningful time, not just chronos, clock time. Your crisis is happening in sacred time, where transformation occurs. The practical guidance Jung offers starts with acceptance. Stop fighting the process. What you resist persists with greater force. Instead, turn toward what's happening with curiosity. What is this experience trying to teach? What is wanting to emerge? What needs to die for new birth? Acceptance doesn't mean resignation, but conscious participation in your own transformation. The community of others in transformation becomes crucial. Find those who understand the journey. Read accounts of others who've navigated similar passages. Jung's Red Book shows his own descent and return. Others have walked this path and survived. More than survived, thrived. Their examples aren't maps to follow, but confirmation that the journey is survivable. Physical practices ground the psychological work. Jung carved stone, painted mandalas, built with his hands. When psyche is in upheaval, soma needs attention. Walk in nature, create with materials, move your body. These aren't distractions but integrations, ways of embodying the changes occurring at deeper levels. The outcome can't be known in advance. You can't see who you'll become from where you stand. Jung emphasized that individuation is teleological, pulled by future wholeness rather than pushed by past wounds. Trust that what's emerging, however uncomfortable, serves your becoming. The self knows what ego cannot. This message finding you now is part of larger pattern. You've been being prepared for this encounter through everything you've experienced. Every pain has sensitized you to certain truths. Every loss has created space for new understanding. Every question has opened you to unexpected answers. This moment is culmination and beginning. In all chaos, there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order. Your crisis feels chaotic because old order is dissolving, but within dissolution, new order gestates. Jung discovered that what seems like randomness follows deeper pattern. Your breakdown has logic, your symptoms have purpose, your timing has meaning. Recognizing this transforms suffering into significance. The final recognition. This will find you when you need it most, because you co-create the finding. Your unconscious has been arranging circumstances, creating openings, orchestrating encounters. You're not passive recipient, but active participant in your own awakening. The very fact you're still listening means you recognize truth being spoken to your condition. Jung's promise isn't that transformation is easy, but that it's possible. Not that you'll return to who you were, but that you'll become who you're meant to be. Not that crisis will end quickly, but that it will end meaningfully. What brought you here, the pain, the impossibility of continuing, the desperate need for something different, is exactly what qualifies you for transformation. This finds you now because now is when you can hear it. Your suffering has opened ears that success kept closed. Your crisis has created receptivity that comfort prevented. Your questions have prepared ground for answers you couldn't previously receive. Everything has conspired to make this moment possible. The invitation is simple, but not easy. Trust what's happening. Engage consciously with the process. Seek support from those who understand. Use the tools Jung provides, dream work, active imagination, shadow integration. Know that others have walked this path. Believe that your psyche knows what it's doing even when ego is terrified. You didn't find this message, it found you, right when the old way became impossible, exactly when transformation became necessary, precisely when you developed capacity to receive it. This is how individuation works, through synchronistic meetings between inner readiness and outer resources. Your crisis hasn't been meaningless suffering, but meaningful preparation for this moment of recognition. You're exactly where you need to be, hearing exactly what you need to hear, at exactly the right time. The journey continues, but now with consciousness of what's actually happening. That changes everything. And if you want to dive even deeper into Jung's psychology, click the recommended video on your screen now.